Hi, I'm Josh.
And I'm Derek. We're both experienced founders and CEOs of B2B SaaS companies, and now we're your hosts.
In today's world, getting accurate information about B2B SaaS products is tough. User review sites are manipulated, and research reports are often wildly inaccurate or paid for. That's why we're here, to bring you information that no one else does.
We go straight to the software companies themselves to break down their products, show you a demo, and give you our honest opinions. Whether you're a software buyer, investor, or user, this podcast is for you.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talk Sassy to Me. Today, we have Chris, co-founder and chief product officer of FloQast. All right, Chris, let's dive in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why FloQast exists and why you're the guy to solve that problem?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great to chat with you all. But yeah, as we dive in, let me first just introduce myself. Chris Sluty, one of the co-founders at FloQast. Started my career in accounting, so I was on the audit side for about 7 years. And with my co-founders, Mike Whitmire, our CEO, also former accountant, and Colin Zanstra, CTO. We've been on this journey together for 11 years, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But it was really kind of the accounting background at our core. So Mike was at a pre-IPO company here in Los Angeles, really owning the revenue function, which is super important part of the accounting department as you're looking to go public, especially as a SaaS company, right? So he was kind of going through all that pain point. I was on the other side of the table from an audit perspective. And in the audit world, we all had the homegrown softwares that we used in the Big Four, or there was other systems that were available as well. But we all kind of go through that couple of years in audit. Somehow I did 7. But a couple of years in audit, you're used to some structure and organization as you're working through your audit engagements. But in private accounting, that same structure really didn't exist. And Mike really felt that pain as his company was going public. You start to scale the team, the deadlines get really, really tight. And there's not that one system that everybody's working together in, right? So that was kind of the core emphasis for FloQast at the beginning. We've scaled and grown the platform from there. But at the core, for accountants by accountants, and we feel like we're the right people to solve that pain point.
That's awesome. And just for the audience, I would hope most people have heard of FloQast by now, but just in case they haven't, just to kind of validate your guys in the market, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, you guys recently raised a Series E, is that right?
Yeah, recently raised a Series E, great investor. We're bringing on iconic partners. They've been great partners to us. Yeah, again, we've been on the journey for 11 years. I'll talk a little bit about the stats and company size, but great validation in the market, but still a lot more to go in terms of how we want to help accountants out there. So excited to continue the journey with the support of our great investors. But end of the day, deliver a lot of value for our clients.
So let's talk about the value. So tell us a little bit about maybe the features and functions. There's a number of different things that you guys do. So maybe go over some of the top ones or key ones to kind of orient the listeners to what they're going to be able to do within the tool and the corresponding value they get out of it.
Yeah, we've come a long way from close and reconciliations, still kind of core to what we do. But want to kind of talk to you about the FloQast accounting transformation platform. There's a lot of features and functions in there, but really want to talk a little bit and set the stage about the why. And then we'll go into some of the deliverables for our clients. I guess at a high level, a little bit about FloQast here. We're building an accounting transformation platform created by accountants for accountants to automate accounting workflows using AI. It's 2024, so we got to talk about AI, but I'm excited to show you some of those features to really see how AI might impact the accountant's role as we look towards the future. Been doing this for 11 years, close to 3,000 customers. We've got accounting in our DNA. So a lot of our sales team, a lot of our support team are former accountants. So each step of that customer journey, you're probably working with an accountant. And I think that's a big reason why we achieve such high business value with our end users. We've got operations here in North America, headquarters here in Los Angeles, have an office in New York as well, an office in London, and an office in Sydney, Australia. But if you're an accountant out there looking for a role, we hire people remote as well. So we got people everywhere and always looking to bring in people with that accounting DNA. So, yeah, what do we do at FloQast? And that's certainly evolved over time. And I want to point to some of the strategic themes we see here on the slide. So, step one was modernizing the close. 11 years ago, and still to today, we see a lot of close process being run just on spreadsheets. I think spreadsheets are useful in accounting, and core to what we do is integrate into spreadsheets from a reconciliation standpoint. But using a spreadsheet for tracking your workflow and your process has some downfalls. We've even seen cases over the years where people are printing out a close schedule, slapping it on the CFO's door, and people are marking off when they're getting things done. Now, in a hybrid remote world, that certainly doesn't work anymore, but it wasn't working even before that. So, step one for us was to modernize the close process, get everybody in accounting working in that same system. So, you've got organization, visibility, standardization. So, you're working towards that days to close goal. We wanted to also then connect close with the rest of the organization. So, accounting is kind of the backbone of any company, but the closer they are to the business changes, what's going on in the organization, the closer they are in those conversations, the better downstream impacts that will have on the overall close process. So, there's different functionality that we have in the system that can help teams connect, request information from other departments. But also in the office of the CFO, we're seeing people want to track more and more of their workflow outside of just the close process. From there, we continue to have the platform evolve and really focus on compliance. We have a lot of great audit evidence in the system today. A lot of people come to FloQast in order to ultimately go public. Back to Mike's initial pain points around building FloQast in the first place was dealing with the scalability and challenges of that IPO process and ultimately working as a public company. So a lot of people come to us pre-IPO, really want to get their house in order with one day that goal to go public. But then as you start to introduce that control environment, oftentimes today that's almost a separate thing. You'll have your risk and control matrix, you'll have that control environment exist, but there's a lot of work that's going on in your day-to-day process where you want to take credit for that work. So our big value prop there is connecting your RCM back into the work that you're already doing in FloQast to ultimately automate that PBC process and really give you that peace of mind that you are audit and compliance on a month over month basis, not just kind of this audit look back period. So having good success on the compliance front, but from there, it's all about transforming accounting as we see it today. So one thing that we did 2 years ago was take our CTO, carve him off with a small team, and think about AI, not from the perspective of just FloQast as you see it today, but how is AI going to ultimately impact accounting as a whole? So we've got some ideas and thoughts there that I'll go through today, but it's been a real evolution of the platform. Happy to dive into features and functions, but overall, there's a lot of challenges out in the market that I'll touch on in a minute. But this evolution of the platform is us partnering with our customers, understanding their pain points, really being able to go deep with them. Me being chief product officer here, but also heavily involved on the customer side. Actually, the first 6 years here at FloQast, I led our customer team, doing implementations, doing support, and making sure customers get ultimate value. So building with our customers and evolving the platform to the customer needs is really, really important to us.
Awesome. And this is helpful. I know, I'm not sure if you have more to show, but I just had maybe a question or two on this slide. First question is, just for the viewers, when we look at customer growth, there's a lot of enterprise, larger companies in the mix. For those who are maybe smaller and, what's kind of the range? Do you think of it based on, is it the size of the company based on certain industries, or is it, once they hit a certain amount of revenue, or when is someone ready for FloQast? Obviously we see the big dogs are, but when is someone ready on the lower end?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that's our bread and butter. That's where we started. Really, kind of that mid-market solution. Obviously, we've grown up into the enterprise and done that just with our customer growth. Seeing our own customers move in that journey from pre-IPO to public company, having operations just in the US, and then broadening out, going through acquisitions, different things like that. So we've had to evolve the platform just as our customers have evolved, but still core to what we do. The way we best look at it is we found this sweet spot right around 6 accountants is where we see some pain points start to pop up for the team. And I think some of those pain points also really were highlighted in this remote hybrid world that we've been in as well. So even teams smaller than that have seen value out of FloQast. But at 6 accountants, you really get into this interesting point where people start to get a little bit more specialized. Maybe you'll have like the revenue team as an example. And once these teams start to break up, then communication challenges happen, right? So core to what we do, that 6 accountants, we work with a lot of like NetSuite, Intact, handful of QBO graduating into a NetSuite or Intact is really a sweet spot for us. But then we've seen the customers also grow on those software solutions as well, where they're graduating to the Oracles, SAPs, Workdays of the world, and kind of staying on FloQast throughout that journey.
Makes sense. And then maybe another question, you mentioned 6 accountants. So when somebody's thinking about evaluating a tool like FloQast, what are some of those pain points, or how are they measuring success once they hit kind of that 6 accountant mark that makes them say, hey, maybe I'm ready for FloQast?
Yeah, really, it gets back to what are we trying to do in accounting overall, right? Deliver accurate financial statements is probably pretty high on the list.
I'd hope so.
Be in compliance. Typically at a certain size, you're going to be going through an annual audit, and that third-party audit is really grading how you're doing as a team, right? So if you're looking good as a controller and you're really buttoned up, the audit's super smooth. Ultimately, if your audit prices aren't going way up over time because of overages and things like that, I think that's really where people start to have that pain point where they need to get their house in order, right? And then as you scale up from there, the deadlines get tighter, the accountability gets higher. If you're a public company and you're late on closing your books, that could impact your stock price at the end of the day. So I think the pain points get a little bit more acute as you scale. But if you're going through an annual audit, you got to have your house in order.
Gotcha. So accuracy, time to close, some risk management. These are kind of the value points that your customers are looking for and they're going to get through the process, which makes sense.
Yeah. And I'll talk about it a little bit today, but I think everybody's looking for automation as well. Everybody's being asked to do more with less, right, these days. Part of that is budgets, people looking a lot closer at budgets. But 2, we're seeing this growing trend that there's just less and less accountants going into the field. And there's this growing talent gap in accounting that software is going to ultimately need to fill. So if you have less people coming into the field overall, this growing talent gap, how do you solve that? One, it's upskilling your own workers. making them more efficient, taking some of the mundane out of their work and making sure they're adding the most value as possible. And doing that through automation, doing that through integration. There's this proliferation of systems also going on in accounting, kind of making up for, if end of the day, if the ERPs solved all these problems, there wouldn't need to be these best in breed softwares that popped up. So we're kind of filling some gaps put in there by the ERPs, but the software tech stack has kind of exploded, and a lot of complication comes with that. So really kind of the next phase for FloQast is really more focused on integration, automation. How do we connect not just people and process, but also technology to help people ultimately achieve their goals and do more with less, because that's what's being demanded today.
Yeah. I'd love to dig into that a little bit, Chris, but I've seen that as well, right? There's a lot less accountants coming into the space now than there were before. And in some ways, all the tools that are out there to help a company run their business and the more modern ERPs are very helpful. But in other instances, there's a lot of SaaS products out there, and it feels like SaaS has just proliferated throughout many companies. And so data is coming from all sorts of different locations. And unless you have a big tech team to be able to consolidate that all and to provide it properly back to accounting, it can actually make things more complicated rather than less complicated, because you have the data, but you have to go figure out what to do with it once you've got it. So I think that's really interesting. I'd be interested to understand your perspective on how, number one, why these ERPs aren't really building out the closed tools themselves, and number two, kind of how all those other inputs that are available within a SaaS company or within any company, really, how FloQast can kind of automate that as part of that. So I'd love to hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, a couple things to break down there. Let's talk about the ERPs first. And yeah, if the ERPs were perfect, we wouldn't be talking here today. But we went on site to one of these major players that I've already mentioned here today, like 11 years ago. I'm not going to call them out by name, but they just assumed all the work happened in their system, right? And we're like, we've got 300 of your customers that are leveraging Excel in combination with your system, leveraging these other tools in combination with your system, because all the work is not happening there. And I think at the core, a lot of these ERPs were database systems first, that you add this financial layer over the top of a database. So they're IT teams at core and don't really understand the accounting problem, right? And we'll talk about automation. I think from a third-party perspective, it's like accounting is ripe for automation and disruption. It's just transactions, and we're trying to populate them into general rules and financial reports. But the thing about accounting that's really hard, the hard part about accounting is the piece that's very specific to your organization, right? And we're a SaaS company here, so I'll just use that example, right? Our hardest process is probably around deferred revenue at the end of the day. And all of that gets back to the different systems that we have, the different contracts that we've signed over the years. And we're lucky enough to be in the position where we've got a very high retention rate. So you're dealing with a lot of legacy contracts too. And all of that creates complexity. The different systems in there create complexity. And then understanding your business at the core is just so important for that end accountant to be able to translate what's going on in the business to ultimately what needs to happen in accounting, and also ultimately the financials. So I think just the ERP systems, they just didn't understand accounting at the core, and they wanted to be they were database companies, they're IT companies. And then some of these suites of products, they see accounting as like, well, we do sales, we have a CRM, and that ultimately needs to flow through accounting because of revenue, right? And you get this suite of products that might work for some buyers, but ultimately not other buyers, depending on what vertical you're in. So I think the vertical specific stuff is where accounting gets really hard.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned FloQast diving deeper into some of the automations around these areas. And obviously each vertical has their own tools and their own data sets, and it's different for each one. How does that kind of align with your roadmap moving forward?
Yeah, and we can get into some of that roadmap and talk about some of the functionality. I'd love to do a demo for you in a little bit, but I don't think you can just put accounting in a box, right? So let's take the reconciliation process. At the core of our close product, you've got checklist, documents, and reconciliations. And how we've thought about it is, one, how do we empower the accounting team? So take IT out of the equation as much as possible. Make those integrations seamless so that the end accountant can configure those integrations without needing to bring into the IT team. So that's part of it from an automation standpoint. It's hard to have automation without integration. But integrations are really hard because of all the customizations of those end systems, right? So when we think about automating reconciliations, step one for us was integrating with Excel. Let's get you up and running really quickly, get that immediate time to value. Nobody wants to do a 9 to 12 month implementation. We want to buy a software and the next close, I want to see value on that. So that's step one, phase one of the journey in FloQast is get that immediate time to value on the team working in one place, organization, standardization, visibility, so that controller just knows where everything's at. So you got that peace of mind from an audit perspective. And then from there, it's going down the balance sheet. And every balance sheet account is not created equal. So you can't just have one set of automation there. So we've got different tools, whether it's related to the bank reconciliation. I'll show some things on matching today, high volume of transaction matching and what we're doing with AI there. It's building out prepaid schedules, fixed asset schedules, really kind of going down that balance sheet, connecting to what are those different subledger systems that you might have. So maybe you use a different system like a bill.com or a ramp for AP and AR. How do we connect into that system, compare that data back to the GL to give you that peace of mind that everything's tied out? But maybe that's not the highest risk reconciliation. So let's automate that, get it off the plate so you got more time to focus on those higher risk, more vertical specific ones that you have to do. So I think the overall key there is there's no silver bullet on automation. And I think the key differentiator for us is having accountants on that front line that can partner with you, not just that initial implementation, but throughout your customer journey. So we can continue to add value and work with the team as we move down that balance sheet.
It's interesting, I'm not surprised ERP systems neglected, I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe neglected processes and features and functions around close management. I feel like for most ERPs, once a transaction's posted, the ERP developers move on to making sure that transaction that just posted, we can do it better and better and better, but then all the after things are forgot, close management, reporting, and there's a number of others that we know ERPs are weak in across the board of ERP systems. Obviously, some are better and worse than others, but I guess one thing that's been really interesting too, maybe the other side of that coin, Chris, is like, back when I was selling NetSuite, it feels like maybe it was 10 years ago or more. I don't even know. When somebody talked about close management to us, there was Blackline for enterprise customers, which wasn't really right for our market fit. And then there was FloQast, and it was a home run. I mean, it was the easiest introduction possible. That and AP automation tools when there wasn't 8,000 of them. But I'm curious now. So I've seen some ERP tools starting to build a little bit of closed management in there. I'm not too worried about that. I don't think they're going to go too deep. But there's been a couple others that have popped up. We've seen, I think NetClose is one of them out there, or Nominal. I'm just curious. I mean, these guys are late to the game compared to you guys, but what do you think of that? I mean, how do you guys view them in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean,
I had
You
to ask you one
know,
tough question, Chris. Come on.
yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a good question. I think, you start to raise the money that we've raised in the space and you start to get a target on your back. And I think at the end of the day, that's healthy for us. We've got to consistently drive value for our customers, right? And it's on us to make sure we're meeting with all of our customers and continuing to drive value for their needs. So, we've got solutions all across the board, big players, small players, ERPs. I think it really validates the space overall. I'm not going to talk about the pros and cons of each, but I think for us, it's just, hey, we've got to continue to earn our customers' trust. It's easy enough for a customer to take a demo these days, check out a solution, watch a podcast format like this, and check out something else. We need our customers to understand that, hey, if there's a way that we can add value to you and you're not seeing it in our solution today, let's have a discussion about that. Let's partner together on that because we've been on this journey together. And I think relationships really matter. I think in terms of like support, everybody wants to go to AI is going to take on everything. For me, it's like people still want to talk to people. People want to know you got somebody you can call up and talk through challenges, right? So I think that's just super important. End of the day, it's software as a service. Service is part of that. And for me on the product side, there's nothing better than when a product manager is on the phone with a customer or prospect, right? It validates anything that we're working on. So we get that third party validation, which is awesome. The customer, the prospect gets that good feeling that they really have a true partner in solving their problems and understanding their pain points. So that's always a win-win for me. And we've got to continue to do that even as we scale and get larger. It's just super important.
Makes sense. And another theme you've mentioned, I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, it's in some ways it's good for FloQast. In some ways, it's bad for the environment of the fact that there are less accountants. And certainly, FloQast is allowing accountants to do more in less amount of time, as are most software tools. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
where we're at. AI is kind of creating a little bit of a new version of that. But I'm curious as you think about AI, and I know in your guys' virtual summit that you had recently, you spoke on AI. Maybe just give us an overview or summary of kind of how you're picturing that in the context of accounting and with FloQast.
Yeah, I think I don't know what stage of the hype cycle we're at in AI these days, but
Depends who you
everybody
talk
wants
to.
to know. Yeah, everybody wants to know like where's the value going to be on AI. We've got co-pilots and different things like that. End of the day, you got to know the right questions to ask to get value out of those. And how do I know as a leader that my end users are leveraging the tools that they have? Our approach on AI is really looking for going deep in accounting, not this thin veneer of a chatbot on top of the software as you know it today, but really thinking about the accounting problem holistically and where are the opportunities to solve problems. I think the biggest thing that I've seen, and thinking more on the software side of this, is I think AI gives us the opportunity to solve more custom problems. Historically, what we've had to think about, let's take like a fixed asset reconciliation. That's a core pain point that almost every customer of ours would have, right? So I could build a solution that's probably 80-90% applicable to the entire audience. Got to add 10% over time to deal with the bigger customer that might have that pain point and everything they need to do there. But at the core, it's the same problem, right? But the hard problems in accounting, like I said before, are the ones that are very custom, right? The ones that are unique to that business, the transactions running through that business, unique to those systems that exist there, and then unique to the accounting that's happening within that vertical as well. So that's where we think AI is going to have the biggest impact. Is the software is just going to be a lot more personalized and customized to the end user. I think there's still a good solid foundation that's applicable to everybody, but then how do we partner on more of these custom interfaces and leverage AI to ultimately help solve those problems?
Awesome. Perfect. Derek, any other questions before we jump into a demo with Chris?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just one more, just on that same topic on the AI side of things. If you look forward, Chris, do you have a vision, say, a bit farther out, like 5 years out or even 10 years out, of how much AI takes over? Because I feel like in the accounting space, particularly, things are getting more paperless, right? So everything's kind of there in the database, and a lot of the work that's being done these days is either in Excel sheets or in the ERP system or in tools like FloQast. How much of that work can actually get automated, and how much of it is worth people spending the time to automate? What does that accountant's job look like 10 years from now?
I think everybody's trying to answer that question, existential question at the end of the day. What's the role of the accountant? What I don't have a good feel for is time horizon. Look, we've got, SAP's trying to move everybody to the cloud by 2030. I think they'll probably revise that to 2040 soon, just because you build so much customization on your system, it's hard to make a move like that. So I guess what I'm saying is accountants are probably going to be a little bit slower to adopt some of the change, just because we need really good auditability of our systems as well. And it'll be really interesting how the audit side changes as we think about what an audit looks like in the future. That ultimately flows back into the role of the accountant in a private company. I think our vision is a little bit more about the accountant role is super important to add in context. If you've worked with any large language model, you've gone into ChatGPT is only as good as the prompt that you give it, right? And the more detailed you are with the prompt, the better. So I think the role of the accountant is going to be very important in adding business context and understanding how that translates into the accounting world, right? We almost need to be the historians of the business. So I think the role of the accountant is going to be a lot more about getting closer to the operational side of a business, right? Getting in the weeds a little bit more on the changes that are happening more in real time, understanding that. Being there to help add that additional business context as we apply accounting rules, and being a really important role in the review of information, almost being that first level of review. So I see the role of the accountant kind of shifting a little bit more from preparer data manipulation. You always have that one person on your team that's super heavy into the Excel macros and pivot tables, and they've built the most amazing Excel file that you've ever seen. I actually think those people will be the first to adopt new technology and see the shift of the accountant move from less of that preparation role and more into the review role, but playing a really, really important role in reviewing information, making sure that the technology is working as expected, but understanding and connecting the dots from business context to how that would ultimately impact the financial statements and all that accounting minutia in between that. So the role of the accountant will shift a little bit from preparer to reviewer, but accountants are still going to play a huge role in that.
So we'll wait a little while longer to have Terminator with a pocket protector is, I think, what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think we've got a little time on that front.
Perfect. Yeah, we'd love to see a demo.
Okay, so we're in our closed product here. So a couple things to just kind of break it down for you guys so you get kind of what the platform looks like. So we've got the close here, but as you go down, we've got this compliance management product. I'll touch on quickly how that integrates into the close process, but this is where You could track your risk control matrix, your control environment, but ultimately link this back into the work that's being done. Other work that people are tracking in a FloQast just outside of the close process. Again, this is more from like a checklist perspective, but we see a lot of teams start with the close, but then add in operational accounting work from like the AP and AR side of things, payroll, reporting, and then project type work as well. Maybe something like a merger and acquisitions, 409A evaluation, things that you're doing on more of an ad hoc cadence. You've got the opportunity to track that in FloQast as well. I'm going to skip FloQast Transform because my marketing team would kill me if I showed you guys that, but more to come as we get into 2025. Some exciting stuff there. FloQast Remind is our product that connects the accounting team to the third party. So if you're requesting information, whether that's from like an internal team or an external team, let's say you're doing a legal accrual, and on a monthly basis, you need to connect with your third party lawyers to get the accrual information. We've got a way to automate that outreach and follow up. So some pretty cool stuff there. But I'm going to focus a lot of time on the close side today. And with that, I'll go into our folder view here and we can check out things. So what we do for each of our customers is on the left-hand side, we build out this folder structure. And this folder structure is just familiar to our end users. This probably exists on their local drives today, but we actually integrate with cloud storage providers to recreate this folder structure, not only here in FloQast, but in those cloud storage providers so you could upload documentation. And as part of our setup process, we'll kind of go down the balance sheet and really from a customer to customer basis, start documenting the work that needs to be done. So take that close checklist, take the reconciliations from a balance sheet perspective, and bring that together in each of those folders. So I'm going to talk about the cash process today. As you go down, we've got checklist, description of the work that needs to be done, the assignees on that work as well. So there's a workflow related to this. There's the ability to leave review notes and communicate. This key control here is linking back to that overall control environment. So if I was looking at my risk control matrix, I sign off on the work here. It rolls up into that RCM from an audit perspective, and you can take credit for that work that you need to do. But as I continue down, we've got the reconciliation section. And our reconciliation section comes in a couple different forms. So again, we start with an Excel-based reconciliation. So if you're using an Excel file today, we've got a way to integrate with Excel. And just like you might have done in your audit days, in audit, I would go in and annotate or mark up a work paper tying something back to the trial balance. Maybe I added like a TB tick mark or reference there. You have the same ability in FloQast to do that from an Excel perspective. So everybody gets started on the Excel front just because it's easy to get set up, easy to use. But from there, we want to go down the balance sheet and start automating these different reconciliations. So on the bank rec side of things, let me just pick an account here, and I'll go into our new AI matching tool. So let me pull this up. So on the bank reconciliation, typically we're looking at bank data and then GL data. So GL data on one side here, bank data on the other side. So for this use case, let's say we've got NetSuite transactions pulling in on this side, and we've connected to your bank account on this side. And as an accountant, I'm going to go through and start, matching these different transactions. Well, that can get pretty difficult if you've got a high volume of transactions, right? Especially if you're like a retail business, maybe you're using like a point of sale system, something like that. And we've had a matching module in FloQast for about 8 years. We were using machine learning for a long time, but we've recently released our new AI matching technology. And I want to show you kind of how this works and some of the differences around it as well. So let me take this one transaction type here. I'm just going to search for it. I'll get these amounts here. So I'm just going to select all of these. So I've got a total amount down here on the left-hand side. Let me search for that amount in my bank. And I've got this transaction as well. So this is like a one-to-many match. So we've got in the GL, this is broken out, but maybe that got rolled up into a single item on the bank side. And these transactions are really hard to match, especially manually. So what we've done here is when the end user creates a match like this, we have the ability now to create a rule around this. And we're going to leverage AI to create this rule. And the cool thing about this is giving the power to the end accountant. IT does not need to be involved here. And this rule is written in plain English. So for many to one matches, we identify groups of transactions between the files with the same reference field. The transactions fall within a 1 day window. I could go in here and edit this rule, but I'm just going to save and apply that and apply this rule to that data set that I had. So it's going to go in and find those matches. And once I have this rule, it's going to apply that to our data month over month. So again, historically, what's had to happen here is you needed somebody that was pretty technical to write, SQL queries against your data. But now we're having AI write these matches, but giving these matches and rules in plain English back to that end user so the end accountant can go in here and make these rules. And I think the really cool thing here is historically with that product that we put out like 8 years ago, we got to like 70, 80% match rate on data, but it was really hard for us to improve over time. You needed a tremendous volume of data for you to move the needle on match rate. But now with what I'm showing you there is these rules can be completely customized to the end client and to the end data set that we're talking about. So what we're seeing from our clients now is getting to these 95, 100% match rates where period over period, we're just getting better and ultimately giving those powers to that end accountant so they can control their own software, control their own experience. But it's really important that the end accountant understands the transactions and data sets to properly add context to those rules. So one example there, but you kind of go through this and then you can export out your traditional bank reconciliation. But this is just a great way to get an extremely high match rate and save a ton of time for our end users, but also change, adapt, customize just as the business changes period over period. I think that's the really hard thing in accounting is, we've got to change with how the business changes. We've got to be the historians of that business at the end of the day. So really taking IT out of the equation here and giving the power to the end accountant, we're seeing really, really great success with a tool like this. What do you guys think? Any questions on that?
That's awesome. Would have saved me a lot of time in a number of places, and a lot of Excel work or SQL work, like you mentioned. So that's really cool. And
this
just
is like
in general,
bank and GL, right? But think about in accounting, just like any two data sets as well, right? So there's like a long tail of problems there that it's pretty cool what we're seeing our customers do with this.
I mean, I could see applying AI matching to businesses that get chargebacks and have to go through that mess every month as to applying them back in their systems, which invoice did it apply to, or I don't know that all of them take it further to line items within an invoice, but even just the invoice is challenging enough. So for sure, makes a lot of sense. That's very cool. That's great, Chris. Is there anything else you want to show, or I want to be, or is that it for today? And either way, that's okay.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I just want to say is like when you think about automation, I'm giving you this one example here. Mostly like the core use case here is around like a bank or credit card reconciliation. But we've got different opportunities as you move down the balance sheet. One cool thing that we've also added is our journal entry management module. So you can push journal entries from all those auto reconciliations that we've got in FloQast as you move down the balance sheet. But the other thing we're starting to do with journal entries is not just push the entries into a NetSuite or whatever ERP that you have, but also pull down those journal entries as well from a completeness check standpoint. So you've got the opportunity to not only automate your journal entries in FloQast, but really manage all the workflow around your journal entries as well. And we're seeing a ton of success with our clients adopting this product. So I think journal entries is a big piece to get to end-to-end automation. And as we go into next year, our big audacious goal is around how do we get to 100% journal entry automation. I'll leave that teaser there. And maybe we can regroup again in a couple months and kind of talk through our vision on that front and how we think we can get to 100% journal entry automation.
And I participated in the virtual summit, so I saw some of that. I think you showed it, Chris, some of the AI around journal entry automation. We don't have to get into it today, but for those watching, the teaser is very cool. Very, very cool. So I was very impressed. That was probably the most impressive thing I saw in terms of kind of new functionality. Obviously, the existing stuff's great, but that was really neat. So
yeah, more to come. We're constantly innovating here at FloQast, and I think the big takeaway on that front is like we do it with a partnership of our customers, really understanding our customers. Being accountants ourselves, it allows us to have these really like deep conversations with our customers, really get into the weeds on their problems. But I think we've seen success with that model, so we're going to continue to do that into the future.
Awesome. Maybe before we wrap up, Chris, for those people who want to get in touch with FloQast, get in touch with the sales team, get into a sales cycle, what would be the best route to do that?
Yeah, go to FloQast.com. It's a hard Q in there, so FLOQAST, FloQast.com. There's no U, but even if you type the U into the browser, I think it redirects. But go to FloQast.com. We'd love to chat through a demo, understand what your needs are, whether that's on the close process, automation. If you're just looking to, I think a lot of people right now are just looking, hey, I've got this AI mandate internally. My CFO is asking me, what can we do with AI? We'd love to have those conversations to help you sound really smart internally and partner with you on that front. If you're that pre-IPO looking to go public company, our compliance offering is really compelling. We're doing a lot more around reporting as well. It's a natural progression from the close process. So a lot of different opportunities across the record to report journey. But if you're an accountant and want to chat, we'd love to talk to you.
All right, Derek, we just saw Chris at FloQast. What'd you think?
I think it's a pretty cool product, honestly. I mean, what did he say, 11 years been building up. And I know FloQast, from my experience with seeing customers that I've worked with use that tool and things, there's a lot that's gone into it. It's an amazing product, and to be able to see how quickly that company grew, there was obviously a massive need there to get more structure and automation and tracking around back office processes for accounting close, and they really were able to ride that wave so well. And I'm just excited to see what's next, to be honest. It feels like there's so much opportunity in this area that if they can execute well on some of these future points, it'll be really interesting to see how they can kind of take their already mature product for the accounting close area and just kind of spread that out. So it'll be exciting to see.
I agree. I mean, there's just certain tools you should not operate without once you hit a certain complexity or size. And I don't think you have to be that big to have to need FloQast. But, at some point, you shouldn't be doing your accounting in spreadsheets. You need some type of system, right? AP automation, it doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't use AP automation. I think when it gets to close management, it's a no-brainer. Like, why would you not want to close on time or early, keep your accountants happy, make sure it's accurate, complete, et cetera. And I think what's been really cool for their journey is they haven't had much competition, unlike some of these other need to have tools. So it's been really great. But that said, even with competition, I mean, their feature functionalities are thorough. It's been built out. And they're light years ahead of, I think, a lot of the others. So it's a great tool. I mean, they're the 800-pound gorilla, and it would amaze me if people aren't using closed management tools once you hit a certain size. So yeah.
Yeah, very true. And it's amazing how little the ERPs actually have in them to help you with that. There's really basically nothing except performing the kind of automated processes that they have, but it's really more of a checklist and a checkbox to close the books rather than tracking what you actually need to do to get the job done. So great to see it. Yeah,
totally. Awesome. Well, I think we can cut it here. This is another episode of Talk Sassy to me. Make sure you like us, love us, subscribe to us, and we'll be back next time. Thanks so much.